Hello everyone, in this video I will show you how you can export your models and textures from Maya and bring it onto Sketchfab for presentation like this. Okay, before we jump into the Sketchfab platform, perhaps we can go through how you can prepare your textures and models for exporting into Sketchfab. Say for instance, you have done up your textures using a tool like Substance Painter. How can you export textures onto Sketchfab? Traditionally, you would hit over here, File, Export Textures, and from this dialog box you'll be selecting the kind of output template, and usually if you were to use a traditional game engine you will use a template like this. For instance, if I'm exporting to Unreal Engine, I will use something like Unreal Engine 4 packed. If you are using Unity, there are a few options here as well. Now, Sketchfab is, in theory, supposed to be able to read textures that are exported into the different channels, as if you were to export this in Unreal Engine to Unreal Engine. You will notice that in the, let me scroll to the Unreal Engine 4 settings, you can see that it is combining some of the textures over here. In this case, it's the roughness, the occlusion, roughness, and metallic maps into one single file. Okay, so in theory, Sketchfab is able to read the different channels in a single image file. However, when I was trying out just now, it did not work. So a workaround, if that happens to you as well, is that you can, in your export options, to set it to something like PBR metallic roughness instead. Okay, so to select this option, and if you can see over here, PBR metallic roughness, that the individual texture type is being exported as its own individual image file. Alright, it's not packed together. Okay, so it might make loading up the textures a bit more tedious, but from what I tried just now, it wasn't able to read a packed kind of texture, so I have to export it individually, something like this. Okay, so once you are happy with your settings, be sure to make sure that your output directory is correct, and then you just and the output size is correct. I think it's stated over here, and then you just hit the export button and you should be able to export your textures just fine. So I have already did it previously, so I've exported all my textures over here, and I've brought my scene into Maya. Okay, actually this scene that I have, I modeled it in 3D Studio Max, but just for the sake of this video, I've imported it into Maya. And in this scene, there are actually some animations. Let me just hide this or isolate these things to better show you the animation. Okay, so something simple like this. Okay, so there's some animation within the scene, and I've also applied the, let me unisolate. Okay, I've also applied my textures over here. You can't really see them that well because of the lighting option that I'm currently using, but all the textures are properly linked. Okay, so I have a few materials right here. It's important that in this particular workflow, in this particular example that I'm showing you, it's important that you actually have these materials, because once you import this into Sketchfab, it will be reading some of these materials that you have created. Okay, so make sure you have already assigned the different materials onto the different objects. Okay, so with that done, I will just do select. I will just select everything here. Okay, and I will do an export selection, or you can do an export all as well, but just make sure that you don't have anything that's unnecessary within the scene. Sometimes when you're modeling inside a scene, you would have maybe your version 1 of your mesh still hidden somewhere within the scene. In this case, this file is quite clean. There's only the final assets, so I can go ahead and do a export all. Okay, and hold on, let me see, export all. Okay, so after I've selected export all, I will need to scroll down and make sure that I'm using FBX export. So if you can't find the FBX export, you just need to make sure that you have the plugin loaded. So you go under Windows, Setting Preferences, Plugin Manager, and then you kind of scroll down. Let me just do a search. Yeah, FBX. So just make sure that both of these are loaded. I think right now I'm using this one instead, not this one, not the game exporter. But just make sure that all of these are loaded. By default, it should be loaded. Okay, so but if you can't find the FBX option, it could mean that you did not load this plugin. Anyway, where was I? Export all. Okay, and then I select FBX export. Okay, so just make sure that these two things are checked. So if you have animation in your scene, you will want to make sure that this animation is checked. Make sure that the starting and end times starting and end keyframes are correct. So let me just look at my scene. Yes, it ends at frame 100. You will also want to check this big animation. Okay, so in this case, I think by default it does not check deform models, but I just check everything just in case. And let me see. I think the rest are fine. The other thing that you need to check is this embed media. So this embed media would allow you to embed the textures files into the FBX itself. Okay, so with that, with everything selected, okay, let me just go ahead and export this. Okay, so with the mesh exported, let's go into Sketchfab. And for Sketchfab, you do need to create an account if you don't already have one. Okay, so once you are logged into your account, very simple, you just need to click the upload button that's all the way at the top right hand corner, and then find your file that you have exported previously over here, and let me just drag and drop into this dialog box over here and click on upload files. So the process might take a while, okay, so you just have to let it load. In the meantime, as it is loading, you can feel free to type in the title of your 3D scene, some description, you can put in categories so that it makes it easier for external parties to search up your model. There are also a few options over here that you can play with. For example, if you don't want any comments, you can turn it off. If you don't want to enable the user the ability to check your different textures, like for example toggle between your base color, your metallic map, etc., you can check that off as well. If somehow your model features sexual content or like very graphic violence, you can toggle this on as well, age restricted content. Lastly, I think there's some download, like whether you want people to be able to download your models for free. So by default it's set to no, which will take up your credit, your upload credits if you're using a free account. Alright, so once your scene is loaded, you can go ahead and click on this edit 3D scene. Okay, and wait for it to load again. Alright, and you should be able to see your scene in the viewport. So in this case, let me see. My materials are there, but for some reason the textures are not loaded up. So this might happen. Okay, but you can see that the textures are still somewhere inside the scene. It's just that for whatever reason it's not showing in the viewport. This would mean that we need to kind of slowly reassign the textures, but never mind. This gives me the ability to show you how to do that. Okay, so let me just do the most obvious one, which is this particular texture. Okay, and it's quite handy in the sense that when you're toggling between the materials, okay, it shows you which object within the scene it's being affecting. So yeah, let me select this one. Okay, and let me just properly assign the textures. In this case, this would be, let me see, it should be this one. Okay, metalness, it should be this. Right. And roughness. This. Okay, something like that. Okay, so the scene, after you have assigned your textures properly, you should be able to see the effect that it is exerting onto your models. Okay, so I've kind of jumped ahead slightly, but let me just explain the basic controls that you have when you are navigating the viewport within Sketchfab. So you can hold down the middle mouse button and you'll be able to pan around the scene. Left click will allow you to orbit the scene, okay, and then the scroll wheel will allow you to zoom in and out of the scene. So it's fairly straightforward. Okay, so this is the over here on the left panel. You can see there are some tabs, and right now I am in the material tab. Okay, so I will probably assign the materials later on and fast forward that process, but you can see over here how I sort of reassign the textures because they somehow did not load up properly in Sketchfab, even though they were uploaded. Okay, so you can see that there are a few options and you can toggle them on and off. So for example, if let's say I have an emission map for this, I can scroll and check. Yes, I do have an emissive map for this. I can click on this and it will be applied. Same thing for normal map. Okay, normal map. Let me choose my normal map. Okay, and it will look something like this. Okay, so you can toggle like on and off. You can see over here it's a little bit subtle, on and off. Alright, so you can look through some of this, click through some of this drop down menus and apply. But I would think that the categories that you'll be most interested in will be PBR maps, normal bar map, ambient occlusion if you have one, emissive maps, opacity maps. So these are the more common map types. Displacement maybe, roughness as well. Okay, so these are the more common categories that you may find yourself working in. Okay, let me go to other tabs. So in the first tab, scene, you can select how you want the scene to be shaded. Okay, so I would suggest, if let's say you are doing a very stylized scene, like for example you're doing anime inspired scenes and you are doing hand painted textures, so you are painting in the shadows directly, the shadows and the highlight directly onto your diffuse map. Okay, you would want to select under shading, right? You want to select shadeless. So what this means is that this thing will be completely flat. There is no lighting information in this scene. Later I'll show you another example that I did in the past that uses this type of shading setup. But in this case, because I do have normal maps and all the other maps, I would use the lit option. Okay, so there's some things that you can turn on and off as well, like for example wireframe overlay. You can change the background as well, so maybe right now it looks kind of dull. Okay, I can actually change, I can actually put in an image as well. I guess if you want background image, you will need to upgrade your account, but there are a few default setups over here that you can use. Okay, so I think I prefer this dark image. Okay, so something like that is fine. Or I can just change my color accordingly. Okay, you can also show the ambient environment, okay, which we'll talk about later. Okay, so these are some of the options you can play with. You can also, you know, change the field of view. My suggestion is just to leave it default 45. Zoom in, and over here, right, if you see on your right next to this panel, there is this save view button. Okay, so this save view button will help to capture your current view in your viewport, and this is the view that the user will see every time they click into your project. They will also see this view as a thumbnail that will show up in the Sketchfab UI. Okay, so you may want to select a view that is the most, it represents your scene the best. Okay, so you can kind of play around with the camera controls. Let's say, for example, I like this particular view. I can click on this save view and it will become the default view. Okay, you can always change this later on if let's say I don't like it. I zoom out, and this is actually what I prefer now. I can click on this save view. Okay, so it's still customizable. Okay, so moving on to lighting. So lighting, you can actually create your own lights within the scene. You can also set some like a ground shadow, okay, to help ground this particular environment. But because this environment, I guess it doesn't really require a ground shadow, I'll turn it off. I'll turn it off. You can also use a skybox, which within Sketchfab itself, there are few options that you can play around with. You can find one that fits what you want to portray and select that one. In this case, I think this Tokyo big site is pretty good. Let's see if there are better ones around. This is fine as well, actually. Footprint court. So find something that fits for your scene. Okay, you can also add in additional lighting like so, but in this case maybe I would skip that for now. Okay, and then in another tab you can set post-processing filters. Okay, so over here you can add in stuff like screen space reflection, so it's reflecting the skybox right now. Right, you can see these metallic surfaces, they are reflecting the skybox. You can enable SSAO. SSAO is just additional ambient occlusion in the scene. Okay, you can enable things like grain if you want to. I think for this particular piece, I don't really want grain. You can enable things like sharpness. Okay, so you make your scene look a bit sharper. Actually, I do like this effect quite a fair bit. Usually I will enable it for my 3D models. You can do things like chromatic aberration, and once again, every filter, right, you can actually toggle, you know, how intense you want it to be. So like 0 to, you know, something else. So I think for this scene, which by the way, it's kind of like a fan art of the Metroid video game. Okay, I think it does quite well with a subtle chromatic aberration, right, just at the peripheral. Okay, so I will leave this on. I can turn on vignette as well. Again, you can toggle the amount of the vignette. I can turn on bloom. Okay, bloom will be most effective if, let's say, you have some emissive maps. Okay, or you have a lot of white objects. Right now, because I haven't really assigned the textures for some of these materials, it's a bit overexposed. Let me turn this off for now, but I might turn it on later. I can also do things like tone mapping, so I can kind of like in Photoshop, you have hue, saturation, adjustment layers. You can do it over here as well. Okay, I might turn this on once I've set up all my textures. Again, you can also adjust your colors here as well. Okay, so there's a lot of customizable options to further enhance your 3D scene. Okay, so you can play with it once you have set up all your textures, right? And then next panel that I want to show, next tab I want to show is annotations. So annotations is quite handy in the sense that you can create certain views of your 3D work. Okay, so like for example, if this is the default view that the user will see when they click onto your 3D artwork in Sketchfab, you may want to bring the user to another view. So for example, right now you can double click on the model to create an annotation. You can use markdowns to add links, images, and other formatting. So for example, I just double click somewhere over here, and it says that this is a full view of lab, something like that. Then I can put in some other descriptions. Okay, so this is the first annotation. Then perhaps I want a zoom in view. Like over here, I have the Metroid alien, kind of here, right? Right now it's being blocked by this white cube, but it will be here somewhere, maybe something like this. Then I can double click over here with this camera setup. You can see over here that there's a thumbnail. This is the thumbnail of the full view of the lab. This is the second one. So I can put over here Metroid alien, something like that. Alright, and then maybe I just create one more at the back, perhaps, or at the side of the lab. I just say that okay, maybe here, treasure chest. I mean, since it's a game environment, maybe I just want to point out that the players can navigate over here to pick up health. Yeah, maybe I just change it. Change this to health pickup. Oops. Finicky. Health pick up. Okay, so imagine this like a boss fight. The player can navigate here to pick up health, heal themselves. Okay, so you can already preview it over here. This is the full view of the lab. Okay, this is the Metroid alien, and then this is the health pickup. Okay, so these are some things that you can add to your scene to further enhance it. Alright, so okay, just so that I can better see the animation, let me just go back into my materials and just change some of this. So the base color of this should be this. And then the opacity should be this as well. Okay, so yeah, you can see that there's some it's a glass. Yeah, I think with that it is fine. Okay, so the next tab I want to talk about is animation. So I have an animation over here. Okay, so you can actually preview it here under take 001. Okay, you can see that it is moving. These two parts are moving, and you can actually check it as a seamless loop. Okay, you can also rename, let me see how you can rename the animation. So, alien animate, alien floating. Okay, something like this. Repeat one, repeat, I'll just say repeat all. Okay, something like that. You should be able to see your animation if you do have one in your scene. Okay, and I think that's about it. So you know, I will go in and add the other, or to update the textures over here, which I will fast forward the process. Okay, and I'll show you you know, the final end result once I've done so. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is, if let's say for whatever reason some of your textures aren't uploaded inside here, what you can do is you can click under manage texture and manually import the texture from your computer as well. So take for example this yeah, this part. Let's say I did not upload my texture, I can import it in over here, but in this case I actually have it here already. Okay, so I think I'm quite happy with the settings. Let me just go ahead and save. Alright, and I can exit, and you know, I can type in a few more things over here and click on the publish button when I'm happy. For now, I'll just leave it as it is, and let's see. Yeah, once I'm happy with this, I can hit publish. Okay, and you would be able to see your model over here. Let me just go back to my profile. It's loading. Okay, let me go to my profile, and you should be able to see your model over here. It may take a while for the updates to be finalized over here, but let me just click on the model right now. Okay, and you should be able to see that it has been you know, tweaked to based on you know, how we set it up just now. So over here, let me just full screen this. Okay, right now we are at the full view of the lab. Okay, and then we can toggle, you know, this is the alien, better view of the alien, and then the health pickup. Okay, then we can go back to the full view, and as we are watching this, you know, we are also seeing the animation being played over here. Okay, so let me just show you another example. This was another work that I did in the past. Okay, so this is using hand painted texture. If I go to edit 3D settings, wait for the model to load. Okay, so these textures are all just painted on. The highlights, the shadows are all fake. It's all painted into the textures. Okay, and if you see over here, yeah, under the scene tab, right, I'm using a shadeless kind of shading technique instead of lit, because if I go to lit, right, I mean, it still looks fine, but it loses some of that quality that I want with this scene. I wanted it to look like really painted hand painted. So I painted everything here from the food. Okay, so it really depends on the style of work that you are planning to do with this. Alright, so yeah, with this, hopefully you have a better understanding on how to do things, how to upload your model nicely onto Sketchfab.